Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 9:03. Let's begin and welcome to the Bricktown Urban Design Committee on July 10th, 2019. Paula, can you call roll, please?
Jonathan Dodson, Kasha Egan,
Here.
Ophelia Cancio, Richard McCown, Ava Scaramucci,
Here.
Sandino Thompson,
Present.
and Brent Wall. And you have a quorum.
Great. So next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for our June 12th, 2019 meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Second? Or questions? Do you have a question?
I was not in attendance, so
I wasn't either.
so I'm not sure we have a quorum to vote on it, do we? It's a question. Is it okay?
Yes, you do. Since everybody in the committee has had an opportunity to review the video and the minutes, you're eligible to vote on it.
Thanks.
So we got a motion and a second from Richard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so motion approves approval of the minutes for June 12th, 2019 meeting. Next item on the agenda is cases withdrawn. We have none. Item 4, continuance requests, none. And consent docket, none as well. So that brings us to item 6, cases for individual consideration, and this is case BCA 19-00016 at 1 East Main Street, consideration for possible action on the application by Don Karchmer. Sorry. Michael, would you like to tell us about this?
Sure. This is an application for the demolition of two structures that were built in the early 1900s, and accordingly we have to assess that request pursuant to the demolition guidelines that are in the Bricktown Core Development District. We provided those guidelines for you in the context of the staff report. And then with those guidelines, we've provided for you in the report an assessment of the two structures in terms of the design, form, and urban character of the buildings, the urban form, the significance of the buildings, the economic feasibility of trying to rehabilitate or renovate the buildings, and with respect to a demolition with accompanying proposal for replacement, in which case, in this particular instance, there are no proposals at this time to rebuild anything on the site. Given our assessment that we've laid out for you in the report, we've come to the conclusion that we recommend to the committee that the request to demolish these structures would be approved. We are prepared to respond to any questions the committee may have, and that completes our presentation.
I'm just curious. How much space, how much land does that give you cumulative to do something on in the future?
Well, after the railroad.
Mr. Karchmer, would you please? Oh. Yeah, please come approach the podium. Just.
Oh, we have a microphone?
Oh, sorry. I get it.
I'm just curious.
Okay. Avis, if the plans, long-range plans for the railroad to come through there as a commuter line to the main
Which
Santa
all
Fe,
of that.
there'll be virtually nothing left.
Okay.
They have to widen the existing viaduct to accommodate the commuter rails, so that'll bring it in closer on the west, and then the road into the parking lot, existing surface parking lot, is there. So you started out with about 58,000 square feet ground. Park, the drive-in is 10, that takes you down to 48. I have no idea how wide they'll widen the viaduct, but then you're going to have about a 75-foot railroad right-of-way for the new commuter lines,
Okay.
if and when they ever happen.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
And okay. Is there any other question I can answer?
Yeah, Don, I get it. These old buildings, they're way back off the street. There's no real windows to them. They really couldn't be turned into something useful, and roofs caving in. It's sad that we've torn down so many old buildings that I'm sort of like, it's painful to tear anything down. But my real concern is just doing a quick back of the napkin on the aerial photo. Once they're gone, it sure looks like you could add an additional 100 surface parking spaces. And the precedent that would set if we came back in a couple of months and saw an application to do additional surface parking would be very disconcerting to the group, to this board, I believe. And I feel like I just need to say that on the record.
Well, I don't think that could ever happen because the city won't issue me a building permit for the property. Since it's under future condemnation, I can't develop the property. It's more or less been condemned without consideration at this point. There will be a formal condemnation and consideration, I assume, at some point, or there'll be a fight for that. But I'm not intending to do anything there. We're going to build a garage behind on the surface lot, and with this down, we may come back at some point and ask to use this as a laydown yard while we're working on the other garage, or the garage. But otherwise, there isn't enough property left there when it's all said and done to use it for anything, and to invest a bunch of money in a parking lot now to meet the standards would be not worth it, because you don't know how long you're going to get to keep it. It may be a year, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, but we don't know. The city doesn't know, unfortunately. So, any other questions?
So I think I had a similar question. I was just trying to clarify because I'm not sure that I heard it in the staff report either. But these buildings are actually right next to the building that we office in, so I'm very familiar with it. And I probably share similar concerns to Richard in regards to just demolition generally, but particularly in Bricktown. Like we're not building any more buildings that are 100-year-old sort of historic brick masonry, whatever. I am very familiar with the circumstances of the buildings. I think my biggest concern, and what I'm trying to figure out is there a reason now to sort of demolish the buildings? Because I would much prefer. So I'm also very much aware of the conversations around the transit piece. I feel like those things are far enough in the future where this could potentially just be an empty lot, and I'm a little torn because I think that there is a case to be made that the buildings themselves might be challenged as far as their viability economically, but I'm not clear about why like now would be the time to tear them down, and I'm sort of personally, full disclosure, still reeling from the idea that we were going to build 4 towers downtown where a Stage Center was, and a lot of controversy around people who liked the building and hated the building, right? But it was architecturally significant, historical, never be replaced, and it was torn down, and now we have, a very nice lawn, right? But there's no development. So it would probably help me if there's not a specific reason to know what development or what use was to come after the demolition, or to see that as part of the sort of consideration for tearing the buildings down.
Well, the reason to tear it down now, as far as I'm concerned, is it's a haven for the homeless. We're running them out every other day, and they're probably going to burn it down if we don't keep them out. It is almost falling down. Part of the roof is caved in. to the western side, and there's structural cracks all through the building that would need to be repaired. So the cost, again, of repairing it with the intention that the city's going to condemn it and tear it down seems like a foolish waste of money to me. Since it would be my money, it's important. Just in general, the building to me is an eyesore. It is not conventionally shaped. It's like two pieces of pie that were stuck together. And I don't see, even if I were able to renovate it, I think I'd have to destroy most of it to be able to do that.
Are there any more discussion points that we'd like to talk about regarding this?
I do have one more
Yes.
question. Is this timeline of this rail coming in, is this like in the next 5 years, hopefully, 10? I mean, or is it just a perpetual, we don't know?
I don't think that anybody has a firm handle on when actual tracks would be laid down through this particular piece of property. There's obviously a lot of planning that needs to be done, a massive amount of fundraising to be done to pay for it all. So I think it's a long-term project at best. I don't know that I would think 10 years minimum before anything would be constructed on this site for the rail connection, but that's just conjecture.
Well, I will comment, and there are two sides to this. Sandino, I had also thought about the property where the building was blown up and there was really nothing that happened afterwards, because, well, it's best to have a plan before you destroy something. However, the other flip side of that is, as a property owner, and I think you could understand this also, I think there's a certain liability that goes with having derelict buildings. I'm pretty sure if someone got hurt or in any way harmed, that the property owner would be liable. So that's why I was asking how long. I mean, I can only imagine if it was 10 years every year, I think that there would be more liability assumed, and it would get to be concerning. So it's kind of odd to me. We have a piece of property that's you cannot do much with. I hate to blow it up and then it just sits, but in this particular case, I'm not sure what the other alternative would be if, in fact, it is that that fragile. So it's a thought, a comment.
Yeah, I think I've heard everything from 10 years to 20 on the time frame for the regional transit piece. And I think just really understand it. I mean, this is like a very unique circumstance. So it's really for me an issue of approving demolition of something without a better, that is a historic building. It's in bad shape for sure. But I mean, I think, you know, many of us here, and you guys in particular, are familiar with buildings that are in bad shape that we brought back to life, right? And so at the same time that we know those plans are out there, and I absolutely understand Mr. Karchmer's position, because he's likely to be a part of whatever that looks like because of the parking and the other operations that he has. And I'm actually very supportive of all of that movement. But it's also right now private property. So the real challenge is that as the owner, I think it is a very difficult situation, because his interest, and I don't speak for him, but his interest, as I would see it, would be in thinking ahead to those uses. So then that would mean he wouldn't want to invest money in it, and I very much understand that. I mean, if there was a buyer for some strange reason for the building, that property, it could also just be sold, and they could do whatever they wanted to, and the city would then have to come back and contend with that, right? So it's a factor for me of the fact we know the plans that are anticipated. Probably many of us are supportive of those plans for what it would do to improve transit and all those things for the community. Those are all good things. But in the meantime, it's just like tearing down yet another building. And we're really good at tearing down buildings. I mean, we've done it with the park. I mean, we've torn down buildings. We've done it in the downtown core. We've torn down buildings. And we've done it, at times, in Bricktown. We've just kind of torn down buildings, and then we'll see what happens. So it's a quandary for me, sitting on the board, being somewhat of a preservationist and really wanting to preserve that history, and understanding that it's maybe less about the building, but more about the action, right? So.
I suppose the thing that keeps running through my mind is I'm more inclined to believe that it's 20 years out, simply because we're the 39th largest metro in the nation, and the big metros keep getting bigger at a faster rate than so our position moves up and down, but we could be 41st just because of growth elsewhere. And the money, there's only so much federal money, and it's, the demand for highway dollars for private automobiles is what voters, that's the number one thing they always ask for. So it's always going to be a fight, and to try and get the money to ever do it, it may never happen. It's just, transportation's hard to put your finger on. So what I'm thinking about, I really would love to see this parking garage actually built, and actually see it happen, and it have like a ground floor that comes to Main Street that has, a cool little, bar in it, and then there's 4 or 5 stories of parking above, and so that it has a nice little active edge, and you don't even think about all that automobile storage above. I think it could be just a really great connector even. I've dreamt about ways to have it be a connection to Oklahoma Avenue where, you could get over the railroad track somehow. That probably can't be done. But anyway, I've thought about this parking garage a lot. I love the idea of it. And so I'm wondering, as we're thinking about larger, where's Bricktown going, over the next 5 years, next 10 years, what can we do to sort of help get this resolved and still preserve the right-of-way for 20 years from now, the railroad to come, so that this isn't just sitting here waiting. Because once it becomes really obvious that it's going to be 20 years, then it warrants investment in more surface parking, because it'll pay for itself and then some. I don't know. I don't expect an answer to that. It's just sort of, as we look at where Bricktown's going, and Bricktown is going, it's exciting to be in Bricktown and see, all the construction of the streetcar finished and people on the streets, and the next 5 years in Bricktown are going to be more exciting than, anything since the first 5 years. So how can we help, I guess, is the question.
I'm sticking around for that, Mr. McCown. Well, I think it's just a vague thing that there's no right or wrong answer. but I'm supposing we have to vote on this today. Is that correct? I wish there was some beautification that could be done in the interim, if nothing else. But I don't know that a blank piece of land is any more or less attractive than a piece of land with two pieces of junk on it. And they are junk. The bricks are valuable. But if I was trying to develop that piece of land, that's what I would save and incorporate them in something there. But as far as the shapes or anything about the buildings other than they are old, I don't think that I've redone enough old buildings to know that there's a crossing point of where you save what you can and put the other aside. This is not like all of the buildings over the years that have been blown up, historical buildings that were just out with the old and in with the new. That's my personal opinion. So I wish there was a choice of a middle vote. Yeah, but we're not sure. That would be the middle vote. But I don't think there is that choice. So from a potential of liability, I think that as a property owner, that's what I see most, because I face it every day, even with good buildings, you know. So I would be a bit concerned about that.
I feel a moral, ethical obligation to be the one, because I'm a real estate developer, to be the one to move to approve this, as painful as it is.
I would second it.
We have a motion to approve and a second to approve. Call for vote? Or, right? Please? All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
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 I'm in opposition, yeah, for the reasons stated before, just for the...
I said aye. Oh. So motion, any opposed? One. So motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 1.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I know it's always a knee-jerk reaction for us and anyone in the Oklahoma City area after what we've done, so it's always a hard decision to make for us, for sure. Okay, so there are no additional items for individual consideration. In other business, we have application for case number CE01001, and this item is consideration and possible action on application by J.J. Chambliss, City of Oklahoma City, to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission for a request to close and vacate the public street right-of-way for the west 40 feet of Walnut Avenue. So this is a recommendation we need to make to the Planning Commission here today.
Correct.
Michael?
Yeah, this application came from the city's zoning department via, I think, Public Works and other associated parties that are in negotiations with a private buyer to purchase the parking lot that lies beneath the Walnut Street Bridge, which you can see here in this graphic. And the purchase of this parking lot is to go to the center line of Walnut Avenue. In order for the purchaser to obtain clear title to this property, they need to vacate the right-of-way that exists currently for that western half of Walnut Avenue that exists above the parking lot. As part of the process to execute this vacation enclosure, the city will insist upon requirements on the purchase agreement that they would obtain back in return a easement for the bridge to remain in place and public access to continue to occur after the purchase of the property. And that's the best way I could explain it. Unfortunately, JJ couldn't join us today, this morning, so if there's more particular questions, I'll do what I can to try and answer those, but that completes our presentation. I'm prepared to respond to any questions the committee may have.
And I'll clarify that so physically it will look and function the same as it has. It's just there will be a different owner, and the closing is for the Walnut Avenue that's underneath the bridge. It's not closing half of the bridge. Is that accurate?
I got confused on this, and I thought we were building bike lane. Because I'm working on a bike lane north of this, and I thought, this makes perfect sense. We're going to move everything over and have bike lanes, and because if you've ridden a bike or a scooter up that bridge, it's a little terrifying when the cars come. So anyway, but I think we can still do the bike lane later, given that we're going to retain an easement. So basically what we're doing, it's a legal maneuver to the ownership of the right-of-way is the city's ownership, and that goes all the way back to the original plat not long after statehood. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sell the right-of-way and retain an easement to fly above it. Well, air rights, I've seen this one before, I like it. And so I would move to approve this because it makes sense to me, but I deal with this kind of stuff all the time.
I will second that.
Sorry, we have a motion to approve by Richard and a second by Avis
To provide a recommendation.
to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission for the request to close and vacate the west 40 feet of Walnut Avenue to the west, to the Walnut Avenue Bridge as defined in Attachment B. Do I have, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All that oppose? Recommendation is approved.
Sandino, I just out of curiosity, did you have a comment or a thought? You looked like you did.
I did, but I just went with Richard's story. I was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bike lanes were a good deterrent there.
I kind of wanted to back up and tag that on. It's another thing.
Okay, so on to item 8, communications, administrative approval report. Anything to...
We just have one item for some improvements to the building that's west of the Stadley facility at Oklahoma and East Main. They're making some improvements to the building for a new retail tenant, and that was approved administratively by staff.
And then to that, we have, are there any comments from planning department staff?
We will have an August meeting. One of the cases, I believe 2 of the committee members will need to recuse themselves. So we need to know that we'll have 4 other people on August 14th. So do you guys know immediately if you do?
I don't think I have a problem, but I can check real quick.
Then we'll circle back around with Jonathan and Brent.
Okay. Come on, Wi-Fi.
Actually, I will be out of town too. That's how we get to my
I'll make the presentation.
I'll definitely be here.
Okay. Ophelia, are you? Okay.
Okay, and then on to item C, comments from committee members. Anyone? I have a question. This regards an email that I sent to you about the ramps that were installed. Any progress on that?
I haven't walked by. I requested that they be painted. I asked Public Works.
Okay. I think I walked by, I mean, it was probably in early, might have been late, mid-June, because I was wanting to bring it up in the June meeting.
It was several months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked them to paint it. I don't,
Okay.
they're going to do it under a different contract. So
Okay, so some
hopefully
movement.
soon.
Yeah. Okay. So then, as confirmed, next meeting date is tentatively August 14th, but we need to confirm that we'll have quorum for that once we are lesser of 2 members. Any other items, or we can adjourn? All right, or we adjourn at 9:34. Thanks, everyone.